This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. It is I, Old Gingerface, here for you, as always. Thank you for joining us, guys. Thank you for being here. You are going to hear, in my opinion, the best police war stories on the internet. The best out there, even on any TV show. I think these are the best. 100% the best podcast for that. I don't think you'll be disappointed, and I'm so glad that you found the show, that you're here, that you subscribed, and you've been listening to episodes. It's really awesome. I hear from you guys all the time that you found it, you binge listened, and you love it, and I really, really appreciate that. Appreciate you. I love you. I'm in love with you. All right, that's a little bit over the top, but I do really appreciate it, guys. It's really awesome. And and you guys even help me sometimes. I've had help in the past, and I just got some help right now. A fan of the show reached out. He is a photographer and audio engineer, and he said, "Hey, I've heard you talk about social media and how you're always behind on it and how you can't keep up with it. Love to give you a hand, love to help you out." His name is Tyler. Tyler, thank you so much, brother. He's helping me put out reels and shorts about the podcast to get more eyes on the podcast. I just don't have the bandwidth to really pump them out. And he's a pro. Like, I sent him a video, and then he sent like 7 videos back to me like almost immediately. So Tyler, you are the man. Thank you so much for the help. Guys, before we get started with our most excellent guest, I want to tell you about a disabled veteran-owned business called Black Box Safety. They've just been awarded a nationwide contract through Sourcewell to provide point-blank body armor to law enforcement agencies across the country. All agencies receive a 38% discount on point-blank vests, shields, and helmets. Get your team geared up with the most advanced ballistic protection customized for your department. To learn more, head over to blackboxsafety.com, drop them an email at sourcewell@blackboxsafety.com, or connect with them on Instagram at blackboxsafety. All their links will be in the show notes. It's a fantastic company. The owner, Jackson Dalton, hell of a guy, fan of the show. So why don't we show them support? You support the sponsors, supports the show. And guys, they're selling, they got like the biggest contract in the country for point blank vests. And they are the best vests. That's what we use at my agency. And I love them. So thank you, Black Box Safety. Now on to our most excellent guest. Very excited to have him. One of these guys who just couldn't get enough and has done a huge law enforcement career, super interesting. He started in NYPD. He went from 1986 to 2006. Like I said, he hadn't had enough of police work, so he went from there to the New Hampshire State Police, where he has been a trooper first class for the last 18 and a half years. Also a graduate of Army Ranger School. Who I'm talking about is the great Seth Gahr. Seth, good to have you, brother. You're looking sharp as well.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Oh, my absolute pleasure, man. And before we started the show, we were kind of just spitballing about, you have so many stories, and we were just kind of talking about how the show would go and little pre-interview interview. And you mentioned you grew up in New York City, and you said you were taking rounds before you were even sworn in.
Oh yeah. So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. It's a great place to grow up. And we idolized everybody I knew, everybody I went to school with. All we wanted to be was New York City police officers growing up. It's very much an action-jacked place in the 70s. And I think I wanted to be a New York City police officer. My earliest remembrance of that was when I was 3 years old. And
wow.
I said that at an interview with the police department. And it was the officer that... the situation I told them about was a real incident, and that officer was there. It was an emergency service officer helping out somebody in Prospect Park. And the lieutenant who was interviewing me at the time, that was him when he was a police officer. So that's all I wanted to be. And after high school, I went to college, joined the Army ROTC, and we were trained back then by all the Vietnam and Korean War NCOs from Special Forces. That was the last detail. They were all infantry and Special Forces from Vietnam. And so we learned tremendous.
Tough guys, I bet.
Yes, they were. But back in the day, that's a great way how to get into the NYPD. So myself, I always wanted to go to Ranger School, and I was given that opportunity.
Very
And then
cool.
went to Airborne School, Air Assault School, all these schools because I thought it would help me with my trying to get into an emergency service unit of the NYPD. I went to Germany and stationed in Germany for about 5 years. And all the soldiers I met, they were just absolutely the best Americans and giving individuals. We all grew. This country is very lucky to have such great men and women in the armed forces. I went back home in about 1983 to take the NYPD test, and I left the Army because I knew I was going to get hired, and I had to explain to the commanding general at the time why I was leaving because I really loved the Army. I loved it, and it
Yeah.
was just a good fit for me. And they just didn't want me to leave without a plan. So I said I just got accepted into the NYPD, and we were so happy. It was the honor of my to be an airborne ranger. Uh, was Go to ranger school. Was guys who got me through that school. Uh, my ranger buddy was a Spec 4 named Holt. He later distinguished himself. He was one of the first guys to jump out over Grenada. I wouldn't have
Wow.
made it through that school.
That's a hard school, right? Ranger school?
Yeah, yeah. He was in the 2nd Ranger Battalion. Most of the boys I was with, they were in the 2nd Ranger Battalion. They were the finest Americans I've ever met. And Holt, he went through the whole school without making a mistake. I was scared to death of him. He was my ranger buddy. And I'm a little slow sometimes, so they kind of matched me up and put me with a great guy. And I made it through. And Holt, he always had my back. He was a tough guy. He was not a peer counselor. He would not make it through peer counseling interview. But he was a great guy. I owe it all to him. The Army gave me my foundation in life. And if I did not go to Ranger School, did not go to the Army, I would not be here in this seat right now. They really, they gave me all the foundation, and taught me all the lessons of life, not just tactics, but how to take care of people, how to be a police officer, how to take care of people, and how to drive on, pick yourself up. It was a great experience. And then I got to go to the NYPD Police Academy, and that was like one of my honors of my lifetime, to get accepted into that great organization. And I went to NYPD with 6 months, and that was pretty hard. I don't care. To me, it was pretty hard. I took everything seriously. I trained. I was in the class with great people, and after that, I was assigned to Neighborhood Stabilization Unit 4. That was about 6 months, and then right after that, I was assigned to the 32nd Police Precinct in Central Harlem. That's on 135th Street. And that precinct had about 325 officers at the time.
Wow.
It was the smallest precinct in the city of New York, with always, every year we always had 99, 98, 97 homicides, just homicides there.
Wow.
And it was, I worked with giants. Everybody there was like 10 feet taller than me, I felt, and just a super, super individual. We started out by walking a foot post. And then I was lucky enough to get into a police car, and my partner had 6 months more than I did in Harlem, but 6 months in Harlem is like 10 years anywhere else.
Oh yeah, you're drinking from a fire hose, I'm sure.
Yeah, my partner's name was Phil O'Shea, and he took care of me. Took me underneath his wings. He was very bright, very intelligent, very articulate. He could write well. He had all the great attributes, and then I was his partner, but I was mostly his assistant. I just did what Phil told me to do, and that's how it was. That's how it was. He's I wouldn't be here either if it wasn't for the Army and Phil. And then I got into a police car. Then about 18 months later, we got into anti-crime. But Phil got into anti-crime. I think there was a backdoor deal in that whole situation where it said, Phil, you're going into anti-crime, but one catch, you got to take Seth with you. You don't want to leave this.
Oh, come on, give yourself some credit. I'm sure you were a good copper.
But I tell you what, the guys I worked with in the 3-2 precinct back in the day, I had Sergeant Fornin, Bobby Lenahan, um, Tommy Barrett, Tommy Kennedy. Those guys were heroes of this job. If you can ask anybody in the city of New York, those guys were the heroes. I was just lucky to be in that squad. I was just lucky to be in the squad and stuff. And those guys were super cops. I was just there. Then we get into anti-crime. And once again, I was with Phil. And that's just basically robberies and some homicides. And Phil did his work every day. He looked at the run sheets. He knew everything that was going on. It was very exciting. We worked the hours we worked, 10 at night to 6 in the morning. And then the next week we'd work from 10 to 6 in the evening. And then right after, I had about 2 years in that unit. And then one Friday night, the United States Army called me up right at the desk. The sergeant said, Seth, you got a phone call. And the desk is pretty intense place. And I'll just tell you about the 3-2 precinct. I did work for Captain Anamone, which is probably the best captain in the New York City Police Department. He later went on to be the chief of department. And he helped structure my life, and his guidance in making sure everybody was all right in the precinct. I still think of him. And it's very important as a young police officer to work for tough guys who are very knowledgeable and who have your back. And I don't think one of the best leaders I've ever seen in my life. That's Chief Anamone. And one night on Friday night, they just called me in, and right to the side of the wall, 3-2 precinct has, we've lost more police officers than about any precinct in the city of New York. The whole wall is just covered with pictures of our fallen. I used to see their names all the time. Pierre Argentini, Waverly Jones. They were assassinated back on the polo grounds. Just tremendous officers. You think of them all the time. So I'm taking a phone call at the desk and seeing their names, and then all of a sudden, this is the United States Army. Was this Seth Gahr? I said, yes, it is. Said, hey, listen, you're back on active duty to Monday morning. Monday morning, report to Fort Meade. I was already in the Army Reserve, and me and fellas from my company, I had like 48 hours to get everything in my life squared away and ready to deploy. So I did it with the help of the PBA. They had a lawyer, all the necessary documents.
Yep.
And then that Monday morning, I was at the airport, and then I was at Fort Meade, took over as a company commander. I had some New York City boys with me. And then we deployed. We did the enemy prisoner of war. We were past KKMC. I just tell you something. The people who deployed that day with me on 48 hours notice, they dropped everything. College students, firemen, New York City police officers, without thinking twice. The Army needed us, and everybody dropped their whole families, dropped what they could to, because we were soldiers. We were in the Army Reserves, but a lot of us were active duty soldiers before that. And some of us were just reservists. And when your country calls you up, and just dropped everything with 48 hours to be back on active duty. America has some of the finest individuals I've ever seen before.
Absolutely.
And I was just honored to be with them. And then we were at Meade for 2 weeks, and then after that we were in Saudi Arabia, and I worked with guys like Jimmy Curran. He was my first sergeant, legendary police sergeant in the NYPD, probably the best first sergeant in the United States Army. Took care of everybody. And Eddie Hammond.
Did you know Ralph Friedman?
Sounds familiar.
He's a pretty famous NYPD guy. He's been on the show. He's supposedly has the most arrests in NYPD history. Super.
Oh, that's great.
Someone said he's like the toughest Jew they ever hired or something like that.
That sounds good. I think I've heard of him.
Okay. So do you remember when you first started, the first hot call you went to, the first call that really got your blood going?
All of them were pretty intense. But tell you the truth, one of the hardest things I had to bear witness to was in 1988. Was a police officer who graduated the academy 6 months after I did. His name was Eddie Byrne, and he was guarding a guarding a witness in Queens. Witness in Queens kept on was a good witness and wanted to stop and change things that were going on. And Eddie Byrne said about he was just guarding a witness, guarding the witness, and a drug dealer named Pappy Mason ordered that he be assassinated. And he was just in a police car. And they came up right behind Eddie, and they shot him 5 times. Five times.
Awful.
And that was in the 103 precinct. And it was in Jamaica, Queens. His father was a New York City police officer, and his father was a lieutenant in emergency. I don't remember that much meeting him. And that very difficult. It was 3 a.m., 3:30, I think it was, in the morning, guarding a witness. And he's just a good guy. And I never forgot that. I try and go every year to all my friends who were New York City police officers who were killed at 9/11. We always stop by Eddie Burns' cemetery plot. And right beside there, he's buried right by his father, who was a New York City police officer. The devastation that shooting caused had a ripple effect. I knew police officers who knew my lieutenant who took care of me, Owen McCafferty. His brother went to the academy with Eddie. And to go to the academy, he's only 22 years old.
Oh, young.
To see something like that happen was terrible. I went on gun runs all the time in Central Harlem. Everybody did, but this was just a terrible situation. And I think about it, but I think it's must have broke everybody's heart.
Yeah, and that was when you were young in your career?
Yes. But
Damn.
Devastation to his family, devastation to other people.
I can't imagine having as many fallen officers as That is unfathomable to me. Like I can't. I've always worked for smaller agencies, but
yeah.
And we've lost somebody before. But I mean, working an agency like that, and even like, and then adding in 9/11, it's like that is so unreal to lose that many coppers.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys do a really good job of remembering them and paying homage. And like you said, when you go there, I mean, there's must be so many places, so many memorials, so many walls with officers' names. I mean, it's tragic.
Yeah, it's a big city.
Man, that's unbelievable. Were you on shift when that call came in to go guard the witness, or did you get called in? Or
no, that wasn't in my precinct. I was in Central Harlem. I was in the 32nd precinct at the time, and Eddie was assigned to the 103 precinct, and that's in Jamaica, Queens. But I remember that distinctively, coming in the next morning and finding out about it. Then an officer was assassinated, so tragically, as Eddie.
Yeah.
Just a young guy. So I never knew him, but I did know friends who knew him.
Okay, gotcha. Seth, can you describe the most strange or most bizarre thing you dealt with in your police career?
I would say the thing that one of the toughest, not toughest, but it was about in the mid-90s. I was in emergency service. I was with police officer McVeigh, Jimmy McVeigh, who's extremely bright. He's a great guy. About 3 months before this incident, we were in a shooting together. And he's a solid guy. He was like we didn't have FTOs, but he would be considered an FTO. He was always a senior man. We get a call. They needed assistance. We were in the Atom car in emergency service. It's like a truck. And we got assigned to request a 1085. Officer needs some assistance. It was 501 West 175 Street. And at the time, the mayor decided he wanted to ticket and tow away everybody's car up there. And that's in Washington Heights. And it was a crowd of people. It was like a little riotous situation. We went there, calmed the crowd down, and then it got a little heavier. And then Officer John Williams, he was standing right beside me. And we get out of the car. It's like a little riot situation. And this kid went up to the 6th floor, and he threw a bucket with dry spackle that weighed about 30 pounds right into the crowd, and it hit Officer Williams, who was standing right beside me, and hit him right in the head.
Oof.
Hit him right in the head. He went down. I think he was dead right away.
Ugh.
I got a crowd. I came out of the emergency service Adam 2 with the Ithaca shotgun. I'm the co-pilot, I'm the co-pilot, and Jimmy's Jimmy's the driver. Take out, and the Ithaca shotgun's it's a sawed-off shotgun, and that trigger goes off a little quick. So I'm holding the officer. We get him down. I'm holding off the Ithaca shotgun. I can't put that down. I don't have time to put it back in the truck. I got that. We're giving him CPR, and Jimmy reaches up. We're on the ground. We're like half underneath the emergency service truck. He is bleeding out. Call for EMS. Jimmy McVeigh should have got a medal. He was able to get on that radio because we have division radios, SOD radios, special operation. We had the police helicopter there within about 30 seconds. We had EMS there in about 1 minute. Called for additional emergency service officers. We had like a little riot here, and this officer's dying.
Wow.
Jimmy, we were like halfway underneath the emergency service truck because that's where he landed, and also for our protection, but that's how we landed. I got the shotgun and was giving him CPR, making sure that nobody's trying to get that shotgun. Jimmy reaches up, gets the suction, trying to get something, can't get no air into this officer. Well, can't get any air into him.
Oof.
And EMS comes, and Jimmy suctioned him to be underneath all that stress. And then Jimmy McVeigh reaches up, gets the suction, starts suctioning the debris out of his mouth. And nothing's working. But we continued to do CPR. EMS showed up, but probably within 90 seconds, put him on a backboard, put him on the stretcher, and then just take him as quickly. EMS took him as quickly as they could to Columbian Presbyterian Hospital. And then I believe we followed just to make sure there were no accidents get there. So like in 90 seconds, he was there. Then we come back, the crowd's dissipated. And I come back, Charlie Rupert and Patty Pogan were there. They were driving the emergency service truck. That's the big fire-looking police truck.
Yeah.
And there was so much blood that Patty was... They had to get out the fire hose, hook it up to a hydrant just to clean the streets of Sir Williams's blood. It was freaking terrible. So they to have a fire hose going full blast just to clean the streets. And then Jimmy McVeigh, he's a very intelligent person. He said, Seth, I want to know how come I couldn't get the compressions in. I want to know why we couldn't suction out. So I said, okay. And then Jimmy drove back to Columbian Presbyterian Hospital to ask the doctor, what's the status and everything. And Jimmy walked into cops back into the car. I was in the car. I stayed in the emergency service truck. I had trying to catch up on everything. And Jimmy went in there, and Jimmy walked right. He said, Seth, I walked right into Officer Williams's fiance. And she said, somebody tell me that's not Officer Williams. Somebody tell me that's not Officer Williams.
Oh, man.
And then Jimmy hopped in the car. That was, but we did everything we could, but it happened right. The bucket fell like within inches of me and stuff. It was terrible. Terrible. He was only 25 years old. He had a fiance. He was from PSA. I think it was 6 or 7.
And he had something in his
And
mouth. Was it debris from the plaster or whatever?
no, what happened is that he got hit in the head, the back of the head, with a a, a plaster that was spackle compound that was hardened. It wasn't soft.
Okay.
So it was a big spackle bucket. It was 30 pounds and it was hardened. And it hit in the back of the head. And with such force, it forced the brain and the back of his head all into the throat.
Oh my goodness. That's horrible.
So it was bad. And that's why it was all for, if 30 pounds of hardened spackle come in the back of your head, God, you want to know, so I'll tell you, but I'm sorry to tell you this and stuff like that. But, I'll tell you this, though. He's 25 years old, a housing officer assigned to Harlem, Washington Heights. He did the right thing. He was out there backing up his officers.
Yeah.
He did a great job that night. God bless him. And it broke everybody's heart. Broke his fiance's heart. It was just terrible.
Yeah.
But that's what happened. It's not going to bounce off the head. It's just an absolute terrible situation.
Yeah, that it is incredible how fragile we are. I mean, I even like watching action movies with my older son. These guys are taking hits to the head and knees to the face, and they're just fighting for 20 minutes. And I always tell them, I'm like, buddy, one of those, and it would be over. The fight would be over. You take a hit to the head like that from a 250-pound henchman, you're done. You're probably dead even. And he's like, no, they keep fighting. I'm like, this is fake, my man. You can't take a hit to the head like that. I mean, how many stories have we heard when a bar fight, someone knocks a guy out at a bar fight and his head hits the curbing when he goes down, he dies. I mean, people don't realize that you can kill somebody if their head gets whacked. We're incredibly fragile. Man, that's a heartbreaking story, brother. So, wow. You must have thought about that because you were so close to it too. It could have easily been your head that got hit. Man,
I just thought about him, and I just thought about him.
Yeah,
that's what happened. This is city of New York. Get trained and in emergency service. It's a 6-month school once you get assigned to it and stuff like that. And it's just like I think about his family. That's what the heartbreak of his fiance,
absolutely.
Heartbreak of the parents. That's what I think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Seth, can you tell us about your most intense or terrifying moment in police work?
I tell you, I was in a shooting back in, I think it was in the 90s. In the early 90s, I was in emergency service. I was riding with Detective Medina at the time. We had precinct officers arrived at a residence. I think it was in the 30th precinct. And he had definitely mental health issues. And he met the officers, knocked on the door, and guy came to the door and turned on a gas chainsaw and tried to chainsaw the patrol officers.
Whoa.
So then it was a gas chainsaw. And then they called emergency service. So then we arrived, we bunkered up, we had the heavy vests. We went in there with tasers, relay tear gas, water cannons, every piece of non-lethal device in the world. A duty captain was there. Sergeant Bowen was there. Sergeant Bowen's a great sergeant, a great individual. Sergeant Bowen's father did 40 years as a New York City police detective in Brooklyn.
ProForce Law Enforcement, the best damn cop shop in the nation. Whether you are purchasing for an entire agency or an individual officer looking to buy firearms or duty gear, these guys are the best in the biz. With law enforcement exclusive pricing, ProForce Law Enforcement is a place you want to be buying your guns and duty gear. They carry all the top industry brands, and the guys and gals that work there understand exactly what law enforcement officers need. As a listener of this show, you get access to exclusive pricing on the gear you depend on every day. Visit tps.proforceonline.com for special deals on optics, duty gear, and tactical accessories that aren't available anywhere else. Really, really good deals on this. The link for that will be in the show notes. You can also visit their showroom in Prescott, Arizona, or store in Brea, California to get hands-on with the gear, or shop nationwide at proforceonline.com. Their dedicated law enforcement support team is always ready at 1-800-367-5855. Thank you, ProForce.
And Sergeant Bone was there. We made entry. Guy was apparently looked to me like a hoarder, and everything was very narrow. The hallway was back-to-back garbage. The sides were garbage. It was about, you could walk down 1 foot, and then we made a left-hand turn. It was just compact with everything. The guy, we made contact with him, and I think first encounter with him was long, about 30 minutes of just tasering him. Israeli tear gas. We had gas masks on.
Wow.
We hit him with everything, the pole, the water, everything. And then he just reached down and turned on a gas-powered chainsaw, and then came at us. At that time, we hit the back door pretty hard. We got out as fast as we could and secured the door. And a few minutes we regrouped, and had to go back in there. The guy's got a chainsaw, Lord knows, protecting. You don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And we were ordered to go back in. The lead bunker team was Henry Medina, detective. He had the bunker, and the police officer McVeigh, Jimmy, he told me, Seth, you're the designated shooter. So I took out, we just got issued the 9mm. And we went in there, hit him with everything that we could. And I'm the designated shooter. Sergeant Bowen was right beside me. And we hit him with everything. This was going on for a long period, everything. And he just overpowered Detective Medina, falls backwards onto Officer McVeigh, Jimmy McVeigh. And it's not, you can't roll anywhere because he's harding. So it's so narrow. It was maybe a foot across the halls. Okay. And they fall back. He's got the chainsaw. I had the gas mask on. We hit him with everything. I repeatedly said 3 times to him, police, stop, police, stop, police, stop. I'll shoot. And nothing out of him. And then I gave him every opportunity I could. And then just as the downswing comes with the knives, with the hammers, and you got 2 officers who were like screaming, who are on their backs. I discharged my weapon, and at that time we just got the 9mm full metal jacket, and I put my rounds into him, but it didn't seem to stop because I think those rounds just went right through. They weren't hollow nose.
Oh wow, yeah, just probably poking holes.
So they just went right through. So then it did cause him to stop. He looked at me, and then he went back. Right? He went back, left the officers alone. I said, "Holy smokes! I don't think this gun is working." And then what I did is, because in our training, military's training, they tell you got to shoot and move. So I got to a different place. I hopped up on the garbage. I said, "Oh, this guy's coming at me now. And I'm just going to discharge the rest, see if this gun will work. And if not, I had my plan. I was just going to pick up a chair and hit him with the chair to get him to stop. Anything I could think of to get this man to stop." And came at me, and then he just fell down. And he was he passed away at the scene. And then I got Jimmy up, and Jimmy gave me a big hug. I did, you know, he gave me a big hug. Sergeant Bowen was right behind me. He gave me a big hug, and we got out of there. And next thing you know was they had me take my blood pressure, and then we were all of us, Sergeant Bowen, Detective Medina, Jimmy, we were all in the ambulance because this had lasted about 2 hours.
Wow.
And we were all gone. I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought that was the end of me. And then get to Columbian Presbyterian. Remember, my chest is hardly breathing, making sure everybody was all right. I couldn't, they were all right. They were giving me hugs. And so I'm Bowen telling me I did the right thing. And then I gave I'm not playing around with the fellas. I gave the emergency room orderly a $20. Here you go, brother. Just make sure we get the good oxygen. Please, please, please do the right thing by me and the boys.
Yeah.
I gave him $20. Just put it into his hand, and that was gone. Next thing you know, I had EKGs on me, everything. And I looked over. Jimmy was on a gurney. Bowen was there. Detective Medina, we were all there. And that was pretty intense. And then that night, once they thought that we were all right, get driven home. And Officer John DeLara drove me home. And John was killed at 9/11. And I changed beside John for every day I was in emergency service. I didn't work with him, but he would always be the opposite shift. So every day, same lock, changed next door to each other,
Yeah.
And every day for my whole career in emergency service before 9/11. And Johnny drove me home. He made sure I was all right. And it was, and then to have that poor boy get killed at 9/11, just terrible.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about that before we started the show, and something you said that really hit me because I'd never thought about it this way. But you said you pretty much lost the whole day shift.
Yeah, everybody was gone. True truck. Everybody was gone. Sergeant Curtin, he was a great guy, and Mrs. Vigiano lost her husband, Joe, and John DeLara, Vinny Dance. So emergency service, we have that morning they had 2 guys in the truck, 2 guys in the Adam car, 2 guys in the boy car, and that's 126th Street. And they just went down the West Side Highway. And emergency service, everybody's Mike Curtin, he's a sergeant, very professional. He's a first sergeant in the Marine Corps, left the Marine Corps as a gunnery sergeant. He's in the Marine Corps Museum. He was the part of the FEMA team from ESU who went down to Oklahoma. He was on top of the pile, and he saw the Marine recruiters' red stripe on his pants, and he was there digging that Marine out. He's legendary in the Marine Corps and the NYPD. And he did. Everybody there that day went down there, and they were all doing. They was the biggest rescue operation in the world. They got out 25,000 people that morning, and everybody in 2 truck, all the New York City police officers, they all died with their partners. Because that's a rule. You always stay with your partner.
Right.
So John DeLara was with Sergeant Curtin that day. And they passed on together. They were murdered by the terrorists together that day. But they were out there helping people. And the building collapsed on them. Joe Vigiano and Vinny Dance, they were killed. I think they were on the South Tower, and it took us months to find where they were. But they died together, and they were in the stairwell. And police officer, legendary police officer, Maura Smith, she was a police officer in the 13th Precinct. She was evacuating people out. And all the police officers, all the firemen, they were doing what's called an aggressive interior search.
Yeah.
And they all died helping people out. All of them. all of them died helping people out. And they pay. We got down there about 10 o'clock. And there were some great heroes on that day. Patty McGee from one truck and Straussen, they dug out the 2 Port Authority officers all throughout the night. There were 2 Port Authority. They got the Medal of Honor for that. And there were so many heroic people. It was one, I remember like about the 3rd day I was down there. We were down there on the dig. And Lieutenant McCardle, who was my squad sergeant, became lieutenant. One of the only people who I always talked to after 9/11 for advice on things. And sorely missed. He just died a couple months ago from 9/11 related issues. But he was down at the pile every day. He said, Seth, come over here. He said, Seth, you're going to go down. When you go down right here, go down as far as you can in the pile. You're going to see about 3,000 people. There are about 3,000 people who are deceased down there. Okay, I want you to go down there and find them. And then I remember that day we went out there. I had the rescue belt with that clip on that you can rappel out of. Tactical belts.
Get the ring on it.
I never used that. Who knew that could work, right? So we threw down some rope. I put a D-ring on that rescue belt. Who knew it could work? And then it did work, right? So I get down there, I'm crawling around, and I went down there with 3 other people, Sergeant Silva, I think, never found anybody. And never found anybody, but years later I found out what had happened. There was a brilliant captain, Captain Mara, M-A-R-A, I believe that's her name, Kathy, Port Authority officer. She was a captain in the Port Authority. Before that, she was a nurse and Port Authority officer. Great woman. She was a hero of that day. She was downstairs in the mezzanine, and there were about 2,500 to 3,000 people stuck on the South Tower. I believe it was the South Tower. But they couldn't get out the doors because of all the pressure from up north, from the top of the building. So what she did is she took out her Glock and she blew out the window. She blew out the glass to the first floor mezzanine, and about 2,000 to 3,000 people fled. Their lives were saved because she had the wherewithal to use her Glock to blow out the glass to get those people out. She is a hero. Wow. She is a hero. So I found out what that whole thing was about. It took me a couple of years, but I did find out. And she said she was killed because she stayed down there and she was helping out a person who couldn't get out. She was helping out a person who couldn't get out of the World Trade Center, and the building collapsed right on top of her. And she saved thousands of people, every day. I'm nothing. And I think about her. I think about all these grave people, and I don't know if I would have that capability to do that reasoning and judgment and do what she did to save all those people on that day. And we all,
it's incredible.
We went down there all the time. We think about that. Those people were murdered. Remember, we lost 23 New York City police officers. 14 were from my unit, 14 emergency service unit.
Oh my
37 Port Authority officers. 37. That's 60 police officers right there. 343 New York City firefighters were murdered. And then close to 2,700 civilians were murdered. Let me just tell you something. There are about 1,000 people not recovered. That's because they were incinerated. I tried to find out. I had 37 friends. I just stopped counting past 37. I had more because we were in emergency service. We were always with fire rescue, and all the fire rescue guys, they were all killed. All the city of New York had 5 fire rescue trucks. Everybody was killed. All my heroes, all the guys I talked to all the time. Before 9/11, I would talk to those guys 3 times a day just before 12 o'clock. Hey, what should I wear to work today? Hey, What should I eat? I'm going to the gym. What should I work out? Now I don't talk to anybody. Ever since 9/11, don't ask anybody for advice. But before then, I'd call these guys up 3 times a day, talk to them throughout the night. And now I don't do that anymore. I don't call up anybody. And these people were murdered. And I found out one of my friends from the fire department, he put over the radio, he said, I got a river of jet fluid that's on fire coming right at me. It's just terrible things.
Unbelievable. It's so heartbreaking obviously I had such a different experience. I up in Massachusetts in college at the time, and watching that on the TV, and it's like surreal because people are trying to figure out like what's happening, and I think all those videos they show police and fire going in because nobody really expected people. I think people assumed those buildings could take a hit from an airplane because so many buildings have in the past. I don't think anybody expected the complete collapse. Like there were all those heartbreaking stories of you guys going up the stairwells moments before the whole thing, like people were going in. It's such a tragedy.
Yeah. Just tell you, my friend Ronnie Gillis, who was a sergeant from the 8 truck, he was checking on everybody. He got caught up in there. He passed away. It broke my heart. Those are fantastic officers. They knew they had saved, all those officers, they had saved 25,000 people. I'll tell you who the heroes are. The wives of the fallen officers, because they had to raise their children by themselves.
Yeah.
Sergeant Kern, he had 3 girls. Mrs. Vigiano, she had to raise 3 boys by herself. They're all successful. Mrs. Delara, she raised her sons. They're all great people. And to do that, to raise a family without your husband, with a broken heart, those are the greatest people I ever met. Is their wives. It's the wives. I think about my coworkers all the time.
Sure.
I go on, but I think about these guys all the time.
I bet you do. Well, God bless them and their families, and thank you for sharing that, Seth. That cannot be easy to talk about. That's a lot, man. Switch gears here a little bit. Do you have a heartwarming or positive situation that stands out in your mind from your career?
Yeah, I loved all the guys. I tell you what, before 9/11, being a New York City cop was the greatest experience up until 9/11. But I think this being a police officer in the city of New York is the greatest experience anybody can ever experience. I remember I just got into emergency service. Kid just came back from overseas. And unfortunately, my mother passed away. She had brain cancer, and Monday she was diagnosed with brain cancer. Friday she passed.
Wow.
You're in a little bit of a, not, just feeling terrible.
Yeah.
And I remember I didn't even say anything to anybody at work. And I remember at the funeral, just seeing everybody from Emergency Service Truck 2 in Queens on duty with emergency service vehicles standing right beside me, standing right in back of me. I had no idea they were there, and they all took care of me. I was always loyal to that unit because of that. Remember the truck, the big emergency service truck, right there on the grass, right by my mother's plot. All the emergency service officers were right behind me. Nothing in my life was never forget that. I never left the unit because of that. I always stayed in that unit. Tremendous amount of loyalty to everybody in that unit for that day and taking care of me. Because when your mother, that's a lot, to go through a war, to get into a shooting, to everything, your mom passing away and you're not even talking.
Yeah.
And then to see everybody at work right behind you. And I didn't really say anything. I just said my mother's passed, and they just took care of me. It was like automatic.
Yeah.
It was such a connection to the NYPD that it's tremendous brotherhood and sisterhood down there. And we called each other brothers and sisters, and just worked with so many great people and stuff who had your back all the time.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. I love that. Really popular question of the questions I ask is advice to new recruits, candidates. I get a lot of emails. I get emails about people who listen to you guys tell these stories, and they were on the fence and they end up doing the job because you've inspired them. So do you have any advice for people getting into the profession?
Yeah, I just say stay on this job. It's an honor. It's a very, very honorable job. You're helping out people in the middle of the night who need your help. Remember, you can be helping out somebody change their tire 2:00 in the morning on the highway or wherever. And you're not thinking that much of it. You're helping them out. They will remember your kindness forever. They'll be talking about you for 50 years. You are touching people's lives and helping them out. It is an extremely honorable job. You know, I did over 20 years in the NYPD, and I came up here. I'm peer counsel with the state police, but I wanted to stay on patrol. That's where I really wanted to be. Like to be on patrol and to help out people, to touch people's lives at their worst moments. You're walking into situations where God himself can't figure it out, but you're in there calming everything down. And that's very honorable. And you're doing something very positive with your lives. And it means a lot.
That's great. Words of wisdom, brother. I appreciate that. So your current position now, I mean, it sounds like there's nobody that could be better groomed for it than you. Your career is, I mean, a lot of excitement, a lot of tragedy. And I think, you have the years on and the experiences to really, to relate to people who are in, or who are in crisis, police officers who are really going through something. You yourself with the shooting, I've never been in one, and you never know how you're going to react because we have this amazing system built into us, fight or flight, and either one that goes off, sometimes it doesn't shut off, or sometimes it pops back up. I've heard officers tell me on the show before that they did 20 years, thought they were fine, and they're waiting in line at Wendy's to get a hamburger and panic attack. Why is this happening to me? And then they find out, oh, I have like a lot of trauma from my career. But now you're in the position to kind of guide these brothers and sisters through these situations. How have you found it so far? And what's it like? What's the position like?
Oh, it's great. You know, I started out on patrol. And then about 4:30 in the morning one day, I was on a crossover. And the colonel of the New Hampshire State Police just pulled up and he said, Seth, I'd like you to start the peer support team 4:30 in the morning.
The big dog finds you at 4:30.
I thought it was, nobody, it's either God himself talking to me or the colonel. It turned around. Oh my God, yeah, I'll do it.
What are you going to say to the colonel? No?
You can't say no. And then I hooked up with a trooper named Gil Bernard, who was a legendary Marine. He was in the Marine Corps in Vietnam. Great Mass State Police officer, and was in narcotics in the state police for about 19 years. And he showed me everything about peer support training and hooked me up with the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation. And so we got certified. And then, as you know, I worked for Major Conti to health and mental welfare.
Hell of a guy.
Yes. And then what we did is we just got older guys from the different troops. Every troop has somebody that everybody goes to. And then we trained them with the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation. And we don't say anything to anybody. People call us up and we just, hey, got to say, hey, listen, I was a rookie in 2 jobs. I get nervous about everything, you know. You get a little dent on your car as a rookie, you think you're going to lose your job. I'm like having a stress attack. I'm having a stress attack, you know?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I got a dent on my car. I got a scratch, not even a dent. I got a scratch, right? And we tell them, but tell you, one of the best things you can do is always have a great relationship with your sergeant, with your training officer, and just talk to them. Let them know what's going on. Even I'm an older dog. And I always let my sergeant know, my Major Conti or whoever I'm working for, I let them know, hey, this is what's going on. You just have a good relationship with them just to vent it down. I've been even on the state police. I was came here with 20 years. Everybody gets a little stressed out. So we take your stress that's 175, take it down to a more manageable stress level. Say that is fine. Early this morning, then about 4 o'clock in the morning, had this trooper call me up. He says, "Hey, my sergeant's yelling at me. I don't like him and stuff like that." I said, "Your sergeant's going through a divorce right now. Your sergeant's going through a divorce right now. Oh my God, I love him and stuff like that. I'll take care of him." And stuff. Just change these people around. Just say, "Hey, it's not you," or something like that. All these troopers up here in New Hampshire State Police, there's some brave individuals out here.
Yeah.
State police is like, if I didn't have 20 years in the NYPD, I'm not so sure I could do this job by myself coming right out the box. These guys are totally by themselves.
Yeah.
2 o'clock in the morning. Backup is like maybe an hour and a half away. Some of these remote locations, handling situations God himself could not fix. And they do it every day, totally by themselves. Up here, there's no 1085, 1013 call for officer needs assistance because there are not that many officers up here, not that many officers. And these officers are so smart and so courageous every day. I said, and their skills to write, they're caring, they're so professional every day. So anything I can do to help them, we're good to go with this. But everybody just has anxiety, whether you're a New York City cop, wherever you do, you just need somebody. We're a confidential service. If you just need somebody to talk to, we're right here for you. And we're older. We don't say anything to nobody and stuff like that about our conversations or anything like that. We don't say anything to anybody. We don't make reports or anything.
That's great, man. I love that. I love that is going on up there. And also it's really cool that you've worked with the Mass State Police who, I've always been a Mass cop and they have a really good rep, very squared away organization. And they seem to do the right thing by their guys as well.
Yes.
And to your point too, I think a lot of, especially when you're younger in the job, there's a lot of, you're very, like you said, denting your car and you don't want to tell your sergeant or you're nervous or whatever. Like I've found in my time in law enforcement, which is like 18, almost 19 years, I think now, supervisors and even chiefs and admin they're a lot more receptive than you ever think they're gonna be. Because what they hate the most is finding something out that you didn't tell them or you didn't tell them soon enough. That puts them through the roof. But if you're up front, all they can do is say, "Thank you for being honest," and we'll handle it, Or if you're having a problem, they're 9 times out of 10 very receptive to it because they've done the job. They get it. You don't think they've had problems? They understand. Unless you get like a real prick for a sergeant, which I haven't really seen. So that's great, man. And do you just do the state police, or do you also will you help out the smaller towns and cities that could need some support? You guys do things with them?
Yeah, we say no to nobody. No matter what it is, we'll help out anybody. Anybody who calls us up, and then we'll refer them. We help out everybody. We help out the veterans too up here. Like 1/3 of New Hampshire State Police are veterans. So we help them out and they're pretty much the law enforcement officers up here. They are the finest. The NYPD too. These guys are all fine people, but sometimes a trooper will find a veteran on the side of the road or go to a call, and then they'll also refer that veteran to us. We'll help them out.
Oh, that's great.
God, understand this war was started because of the murder of all these police officers. We just came out of a 20-year war. And to me, I think, and I did go overseas again with the 101st Airborne Division, but all these soldiers, sailors, Marines, Air Force men, Coast Guard men and women who defend this country. Remember, I was also at the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. Emergency service responded to that. There was nothing done after that. And then after killing all these people, it's, you talk about 20-year war. I think a 20-year war is the proper response for murdering and incinerating almost 3,000 New Yorkers, police officers, firemen. You can't do that. You can't murder imagine, murder 343 firemen, and then you get a 20-year war, and that's right. And I remember President Bush stood by it and stuff and didn't let that go. They destroyed all those people. All those people were incinerated. Police officers doing their job, murdered. They were murdered by those terrorists. And these soldiers coming back home, doing a long deployment, coming back home, job isn't doing well. Maybe their family, the hardest part of the war is sometimes just coming home and readjusting.
Yeah.
And they get arrested for DWI. Call me up, I'll help you out. Take you down to the VA, threw up all over yourself. I'll help you clean yourself up. God bless you for going to war. Nobody can murder 60 police officers in the city of New York, and that's terrible. All those firemen just kill them. You just can't just talk your way. You just can't. It's not time for talking. Killing all those people, destroying all those people's lives. That's generational. Can't do that. So President Bush did the right thing. He did the right thing.
Yeah, what a tragedy, brother. Amazing career, Seth, and you're still at it. You're, 38 years now total? That's a long, you might be going for the record, man.
No, I don't think so. They got they got some guys up in Maine. They're in the 70s and stuff like that. They love the job. They're up in Maine. They got cops who are 70s or some older boys here. I'm just a kid to some of these guys over here, but this is a great job.
70's too old.
To have.
Yeah. 70's too old to getting thrown down by some 20-year-old kid.
They're having problems with the 70-year-olds qualifying with the guns and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
That's around here the same thing. Massachusetts will give waivers because our age is, I think it's 65 is as old as you can be, but you can get a waiver from the legislature. And so we've had guys like 1 waiver, 2 waiver, 3 waiver. Now they're in their 70s, and that is exactly what happens. The range officer just can't get them through, and they go, listen, and a lot of the guys too, they're, huge hearts, but it's like, buddy, what are you going to do? Some frat kid or some young thug or whatever throws you against your cruiser, throws you down, breaks your hip. Now your whole, everything's ruined because you pushed it into your 70s. It's like, sometimes it's time to hang it up, but, God bless them for having that kind of desire and determination to stay on. I hear 70-year-old guys shagging calls. Like there's troopers that work part-time in a lot of, because I work in Western Mass. It's all, we don't get half the money the coast gets. And a lot of us work alone. And there are 70-year-old dudes out here shagging calls, patrolmen. And it's like, man, unbelievable. I can't believe they're doing it, but hey, we are having problems. Like we're having problems with getting coppers and all that stuff. I feel like the pendulum is swinging the other way now, but it's, as there's been a long stint of like, just, when I started, if you applied to a PD, there'd be like 70 applicants. There'd be a test. They'd fill up the cafeteria, the local school. And now it's like, we're just forgiving a lot of stuff in the background to get somebody on, just to get a body, which is not, the irony is thick because the overreaction and the punishment of the police, which was totally unwarranted, is now giving the public the product that they never wanted. You're getting guys that maybe in some cases shouldn't be cops. So I know that's a whole nother can of worms, Seth, but brother, I really appreciate you coming on. Phenomenal stories. It was an absolute honor. I have to do the outro to the show. Can you hang on for just like 2 or 3 minutes?
Good to go, sir. Yeah.
All right, brother. Thank you. The great Seth Gahr, just fantastic stories. And I know he's probably got dozens and dozens. So maybe we can get him back for more. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what he thought of the interview first. Guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. As I always say, if you really love the show and you want to support it, you can do that on the Patreon. The link is in the show notes. If you don't have the money or you're too tight or whatever, don't worry about it. I totally understand. the show will remain free. You'll always get the 4 interviews a month of the men and women of law enforcement telling their incredible stories. But it is appreciated if you can. You know what I'm talking about? These are the lieutenants. These are the big dogs. The great and powerful Andy Biggs. Kyle Roberts, everybody. Michael Roach of Roach Machine AI Solutions. Check him out. The great Lieutenant Thomas Connell. Now down to the sergeants. Adam Alexander, everybody. Adam McMahon. Adam Mihal. Lots of Adams, and I love it. The great Ben Peters. Bentley Barnett. Thank you, sir. Brad Thompson. Dan Carlson from Burley Boards. Amazing woodwork on Instagram. Check him out. Sherry Finch. Thank you, Madam. Clark Luckoff. Dave Ellman. Dennis Carrasquillo. Doug and Kelly Newman. Love you guys. Hope you're enjoying Wyoming. Dylan Mosher. Elliot Sykes. Gary Steiner. Greg Carey Otis, everybody. The great Greg Gadboy. James Rose. Jason Labrie, everyone. Jason Lau. John Jordan. John Shoemaker. John and Aaron Kate. Love you guys. See you at church. Lauren Simpson. The handsome Lane Campbell. The great Lisa Gano. Holding it down to dispatch. Thank you, Lisa. Iceman from Motor Cop Chronicles. Check him out. Nancy Hammond, everybody. Nick Adams. Paul Maloney. Raymond Arsenal. None other than the great Raymond Arsenal. The great Richard Tolles. Keep on trucking, brothers. Stay safe out there. Sasha McNabb. Scott Young. Sean Clifford. Seth Wright. Sheriff Ronald Long. Tammy Walsh. Hold it down to dispatch. Thank you, madam. Tony Fahey. William James Long. That's Deputy William James Long. You. Thank you very much. Zachary Pleat. And the great George Tessier. Love you, buddy. See you at church. Guys, thank you so much for the continued support on the Patreon. I truly appreciate it. If you listen this far in the show, then you are a true fan, and I implore you, if you can, if it's in your heart, subscribe to the Patreon, because believe it or not, running the show is not free. It takes a lot of time, scheduling, editing, subscriptions, all those things. I do it out of love, but I do appreciate the support. So I love you guys, and I'll see you next week.